There's something that we call the cone of uncertainty.
Hmm.
So if you ever heard of this, have you ever heard of this?
I don't think so. I feel like I have, but go ahead and explain that.
Yeah. So imagine a cone. Like I like to use a cheerleading cone example
Yeah.
because for some reason it makes me smile, right? So I want you to imagine a cone on one side that's large. It's the large opening, and it kind of
Hmm.
scales down to a narrow opening, right?
Yeah.
And I want you to imagine on the large side, it's opaque, right? It's hard to see through. And on the
Yeah.
small side, it's nearly transparent. And I want you to imagine on the large side that hundreds of different lines, strings, cables of different colors, textures, shapes,
Yeah.
thicknesses are all entering this cone. And then on the other side, where it becomes transparent, you start to see only a few pieces of
Hmm.
this cone, right? You can see a few of these strings, a few colors, a few textures. But what you're certain of
Hmm.
is when that point where that cone ends, that
Hmm.
opening stops, that one string or one cable will come out.
Yeah.
You know the color, you know the texture, you know the thickness. So, using this analogy of all the possibilities out there, of all the dangers that could happen, people start to catastrophize, they emotionally reason on the most scary looking thing that's out there, right?
Right.
They're looking at that harshly braided metallic cable that's just going to cut your hand and cut your mouth, right? It's going to be terrible. They catastrophize on it.
Hmm.
But the reality is that's could never happen.
Hmm.
Intelligence professionals don't focus on everything that's out there.
Hmm.
They focus on this very, very narrow in
Yeah.
that right before things happen, they can see two or three of these high probabilities, the likelihoods of things occurring with what they're currently observing,
Okay.
what they can currently collect on. And then they can also be informed by everything that left in the past.
Hmm.
They can see where what kind of color, what kind of thickness, what kind of angle is the string projecting? Is it
Hmm.
going in an upward curve? Is it going in a downward curve? Is things staying neutral? Is it getting bigger? Is it getting smaller? Is it getting more deadly? Or is it becoming more beneficial?
Hmm.
Right? So this is how I think people need to think about all of the things that create anxiety in them, that
Hmm.
creates fear in them. So when you see that business owner or that creative that is worried about all of these things in the future, don't worry about all of the things in the future. You can't control all of those, but what you
Hmm.
can do is be informed of that small, transparent part. How you can start gaining advantage and start making the right decisions because that train is moving, right? That the yarn is still moving.
Yeah.
But what you can do is hop on the right string, make sure what comes out on the other end, you're
Hmm.
informed, and then that informs your next decision.
Yeah. So why do you think people like to focus specifically on like the most worst scenario? Because we hear with AI is going to kill us all. It's going to displace all of our jobs. Why do you think people just like to focus on what's the worst possible scenario that could happen?
Yeah, so they emotionally catastrophize, right? It's called catastrophizing, or
Hmm.
they emotionally reason. And what that really comes down to is a few things. Um, Two things that I'll mention is one thing's called open loops. So whenever they have, like, I'll say this: how many things are you thinking about on your average day that is not towards your priorities for that day? Just
Hmm.
think about that for a second.
Yeah.
You can think of probably 10 off the top of your head. I got this to do. I have that to do. Those are all things that are taking up your cognitive bandwidth,
Hmm.
right? And because things are taking up your cognitive bandwidth, you can't focus on what you're actually doing that is productive because you have this extra cognitive load that's being demanded on your resources. So your
Yeah.
resources start to become drained. When your resources become drained, it's very easy to get irritable. It's very easy to get disfocused. It's very easy to get distracted. And whenever you're irritable, you're distracted, you're hungry, you can't really focus. It's very easy to get emotional, right?
Hmm.
So one small thing that happens, it becomes an amplification, right? We were talking about volume and pace earlier.
Yeah.
A little bit of volume, all saying the same thing, you don't have the resource, you don't have the bandwidth to dissect what's occurring. You don't have the bandwidth to understand which string is important and what is BS, what is fake. So you start interpreting fake news, you start interpreting like things that are creating an emotional engagement as
Mm-hmm.
truth, and that truth becomes your truth, that becomes your perception, and you're not gaining that perspective, and then you fall into those emotional traps.
So can the same be true for just having a bunch of things? Like say that you have 10 different things that you haven't done, and then one new thing comes along, and you're super emotional on that because you still have like have these bills to pay, have these things to get done at work. You know, just like from HR is being a bitch to me, like like everything just piles on, and uh, and when one new thing adds on to that, it just increases anxiety even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so what you're talking about there is around that cognitive load, and specifically, if anyone wants to look this up, it's called extraneous load.
Mm-hmm.
So there's three types of load. There's intrinsic load, which is the task that you're doing with, the difficulty of that task. You have extraneous load. It's all that head trash, what we call head trash.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have what's called germane load. Germane load is how you actually build skill. It's how you build expertise.
Mm-hmm.
People focus on that extraneous load, and like on average, I think some studies that were done is 90+% of your cognitive bandwidth is
Yeah.
extraneous load. So
Mm-hmm.
I want you to think just for a moment, as a creative, as an entrepreneur, as someone who's in the finance field, think about if you can remove all of that head trash, or at least
Mm-hmm.
reduce it by 50%. How much
Mm-hmm.
more bandwidth can you build your expertise that you can leverage against harder problems? Just imagine that for a second.
Yeah. I would assume that if you don't have all that extra bandwidth that you have to deal with, you'd be more productive at work or anything in life.
Absolutely. It is the difference between a trained and an untrained mindset whenever
Mm-hmm.
you just become aware of those things, right?
Yeah.
So in our language, we have three forms of training. We have
Mm-hmm.
an untrained person, we have a trained person, and we have a proficient person.
Yeah.
And in the world of Everyday Spy, what we talk about is the untrained versus the trained.
Mm-hmm.
Simply being aware, and now you knowing that there's a different type of brain load, right? Things that
Mm-hmm.
will create head trash. If you can learn how to reduce that, and then learn how to take that excess that you have and put it in that other gas tank, how much further faster you can achieve those things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you make some great points, and it's just that when it comes to focus, I think that now, especially with everything being so accessible now, it's making it harder for us to focus, and I think that's what's leading to this like short attention span.
Absolutely. And specifically, so I'll give you a framework that I probably shouldn't share with you, but I'm going to share with you anyways.
Go ahead.
So a big problem. So in Everyday Spy, I'm one of their lead instructors, and I'm one of the lead instructors in a program called Skunkworks.
Mhm.
And inside of Skunkworks, we have a whole portion that we teach that is
Mhm.
around this cognitive world, right?
Mhm.
Preparing our brains to do hard work like a trained professional.
Right.
And part of this is something that we call building momentum.
Mhm.
And building momentum is about really how can you focus on what actually matters,
Mhm.
the tasks that will be productive. So you have two options. You only ever have two options:
Uh-huh.
to do something that is productive or do something that is counterproductive
Mm.
towards what you're trying to achieve. If you look at everything through that lens on what actually matters here, and you filter it through what is productive for you versus what is counterproductive for you, the choice becomes very easy.
Yeah.
You don't have the soda, you don't have the fatty cake, right? You start doing the thing that you need to do, and it becomes very easy. Whenever you
Mhm.
do the fastest thing first by through that lens, you can now match the cognitive resources that you have towards the thing that matters that is also going to be productive for you,
Yeah.
right? It becomes game changing.
Yeah, no, I agree. But, I think we're coming to an end now. But this has been a really great conversation. And I'm glad that we touched on like several different topics because I think this is more important now than ever to just think about focusing and thinking about like what the threats are, but kind of keeping those separated because if you're constantly thinking about everything possibly wrong that could happen in your life, you're not going to get anything done ever.
Yeah. Yeah. The last thing I'll say with that, to that exact point that triggers in my mind, it's something that we call tripwires. So we have
Mhm.
emotional tripwires, we have physical tripwires. Just like you have an alarm system at your house,
Mhm.
we do the same thing in the professional world with our emotions, right? So just think, if you're engaging and you're scrolling on whatever social media platform
Yeah.
that you're scrolling on, if you feel an emotion, if you feel some kind of
Mhm.
way, a red flare should pop off. That
Yeah.
should be your first flag on saying, that is my tripwire, that I am being manipulated right now.